Good morning and happy Mani's Day to you. Today we celebrate the Norse god Mani. Now, we'll talk about him because he is a very pivotal god. For those of you who have not studied Norse legend and lore, um, we'll get to him in just a minute. First, I want to give a huge shout out to the technical minds at Streamlabs for getting us back online with TikTok. So this morning we are live on TikTok. Thank you very much. So we're live today here on New Reality TV. As always, newrealitytv.com, a great a collection of perspectives that I think could help you find either obtain or maintain your mental space. So check them out. You will not be disappointed. As always, we're live this morning on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok as well. So for all of those viewers who join us there, thank you so much for your support. If you haven't had a chance yet to hit the magical secret handshake with any of those platforms, please do so, as it helps us to get into the algorithm and hopefully get this message in front of those who really need to hear it, right? So please check one of those boxes and by all means ring the bell so that you can be notified each and every morning as we produce our morning show. Finally, I want to call out NorseWhispers.com for those of you who need to bend an ear, need to find someone who can listen and hopefully provide you with whatever you need to obtain or maintain that mental space. All right, just a bend an ear to hear and listen and work with and hopefully find answers from the spiritual realm that can help you again obtain mental space. And finally, for those of you who haven't had a chance, I do want to call out Karen Kavalag, I believe, who did make a donation, and I very much appreciate that. Thank you so much, Karen. Your help goes a long way in helping promote this mission. For those of you who don't or haven't yet, please feel free to do so, as it is wide open. All right, now, so this morning we're talking about Mani. And what is Mani? Mani, of course, according to the Norse legends, Mani was the god represented by the moon. And what he did in his everyday life, in just being Mani, was he provided a balance for Sol, the sun. Now, Sol, the sun, his sister, she rose in the east, and when she was rising, of course, she brings brightness, she brings the light, the illumination, the intellect from the spiritual realm, offered to all of those who are willing to listen. Just tons of intellect about a great many things. Many different people take many different pieces of intellect each and every day. Just simply by sitting still, we can observe all of these intellectual pieces kind of flow into our mind, right? And this is what you feel many times if during the day we just sit still and kind of close our eyes, and we find all these ideas and these thoughts and these different perspectives all coming into our brain. Well, this is because Mani is producing energy that's coming into the earth, or I should say Sol is creating this energy that's coming into the earth, and we're absorbing it. And so it is just intellect coming into our mind. Now, what happens when we get intellect? What happens when we read a really good book? Well, of course, we want to read more about this. We we're driven with questions, right? We have all these questions that are going to come up in our mind, and those questions are where now we're into this turn towards or away from soul, and now we're going down towards Mani. Mani overnight, of course, is the darkness or the unknown, and so it simply needs to be illuminated. So we're going to have more and more questions. We're going to reach a peak in the middle of the evening where the questions kind of begin to run their course, and then we're going to start collecting intellect again as we begin our upswing into the time of soul. So Mani had a very important function. Now, in addition to providing this balance of intellect versus questions, he also provided a balance for the temperature, for the heat, right? Midday, we have nice and warm temperatures, and then in the evening, Mani would bring in the cooler overnight lows. Now, what this did is it kind of kept the balance of the temperature of the planet, of Mother Yord, so that we could exist and function effectively. We didn't get too cold and die off like the ice ages, or we didn't get too hot and overcook. All right? So we have a balance that's obtained, light and dark. Now, light and dark also represents intellect. In the whole concept of energy, it represents illuminated energy is intellect. It's knowledge. It's wisdom. It's guidance. It's the things that we know, right? So that's illumination, and that's what you provide to the world, right? So somebody asks you a question about something you know. What do? You illuminate them. You give them that knowledge. You give them that energy that they can then absorb or not. But that decision is completely on them. But we're just offering energy. Now, in this case, energy may be in the form of us verbalizing, telling them how it is. Maybe we have a video or a book, and that we provide them with this idea at which they can then absorb this energy. So illumination. And so dark energy is simply that energy that is waiting to be illuminated. It's kind of coming into fruition, right? So it's a very important part of gaining knowledge and retaining knowledge if we have this dark energy to then be illuminated, right? So dark energy is simply that energy that has not been illuminated. I always, the example I was given when my grandfathers were explaining this in a trance was like being in a dark room, right? You go into the dark room, you have no idea whether you're going to kick a table or a chair or a dog or who knows, right? It's dark, you can't see. But when we pull out our flashlight and we start flashing our light around, what do we get? We get illumination of the area, and now we can navigate this dark room. So in much the same way that we would illuminate that room, can we illuminate our path forward, our life, by becoming educated, by illuminating ourselves? A lot of people have come to me and they've said, what about this and this and this and this? And there are people in the world, there are physical forms in the world that don't want intellect. They're okay with being in the dark. It's okay for them. And so it's that kind of thinking, unfortunately, that we find exists. Now, can their darkness, can their willingness to be in the dark, can that affect us? Yes and no. Yes, in that if we try to provide for them this illumination, this information, and they deny it, we may feel offended. We may feel, man, that was rude, right? That, why don't they want to learn? Every individual has a different path. Some paths, some people say, well, I'm 50 and I don't seem to have this yet. The key word there is yet. Everyone's path is different. Everyone's uh, trajectory towards their destiny, towards where they're supposed to be, according to the universe, is where it is. The key, the key to understand is this isn't a race. Some people, as an example, I came to my spirituality, if you will, originally, as you know, for those of you who followed the show, through the Christian church. Originally, I was like 30 ish, 30 something, before it occurred to me, hey, maybe there's something bigger than just myself. I was pretty focused on the physical realm, materialistic. Um, is what it is. It is who I was. So, my illumination regarding my spiritual path, regarding my spiritual understanding, regarding all of the emotional connections I needed, started. Um, I was 30 plus years old. And now here I am, some 20 plus years later. And now I have found my true path, my true understanding, and my true, really, my path to destiny, right? But that came along later. I came to the church, like I said, mid 30s. I would serve in the church for about 12 years. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I just had so many questions, so much dark energy. Why is this? Why is that? Why didn't that happen? Why didn't this happen? And the more I studied, the more I tried to gain intellect, the more holes I found, I guess, in the doctrine and the ideology behind Christianity. Now, that's for me. I'm not saying for those of you who subscribe to monotheism and the Christian path, that may work for you. And that's okay. It's completely okay. I Your mental health is as important as your spiritual health. Okay? So wherever you are spiritually, whether it be with Christianity, whether it be with Buddhism, whether it be with Confucianism, whether it be the indigenous beliefs of our ancestors, wherever you're from, regardless, there are some universal truths that just kind of float across all of them. And the first and the foremost is the management of energy within the human mind. So critical, because without it, we find ourselves kind of notching up this anxiety, the silt on the bottom of a tube or a bottom of a drain pipe, right? You have just that bottom silt that sits in there. Same thing occurs when we are living outside of our authentic self. We are putting on masks to fit into society, into a community, into a club or whatever. And we start living outside of what we really are, who we are authentically, right? And as we do that, we find that delta between where we're living and where we're supposed to be, right? That delta creates a stress in the mind. Whether we acknowledge it or not, that stress sits down here, okay? And the problem with that stress being there is it slowly builds up over a multitude of events, a series of experiences. And what it's doing is it's clouding or filling. We have a traumatic event. Could be anything. And of course, depending how large we have filled our brain with the stress, right? It doesn't have to, that trauma that we receive is now getting smaller and smaller. But what's going to happen is because of all this filled in here, we're going to have a traumatic event that just lands into our brain, our processor. When it does that, our brain doesn't have enough room to process it. So what happens first is the trauma that we just received is going to take up what I like to call the head space. On the very top of our pipe is a space that's kind of dedicated for thinking, for applying cognitive thought to our sensory input. Well, because we've crowded the bottom here now and we've pushed the trauma up, the trauma is going to overrun this cognitive space. We're not going to be able to think, right? The trauma is just going to overwhelm our processor. Now, in some cases, when you get that much trauma and we have that little of bandwidth, it could have physiological symptoms: sweating, heartbeat, high stress, blood pressure, all of those things that we recognize as kind of these indicators of stress and anxiety, including up to and including anxiety attacks, where you have essentially this trauma, real or perceived, this trauma has overrun the boundaries. It's exceeded now outside. And the brain doesn't know how to deal with this at all. So it kind of begins to shut down, kind of shut that part down to in an attempt to kind of corral things back into where it needs it to be. Now, obviously, as the brain processes chewing smaller and smaller bites, eventually you'll get to a place where it's like, okay, I got this now. Why? Because now the trauma has been reduced and now we have a bit of headspace back, right? So we can now think our way through this. We can chunk it down because that's the best way to do it, right? It's chunk it down. We can also start thinking about the silt that we have, cleaning out some of those stresses. Now, a very good friend of mine says when she is just feels overwhelmed, she sits down in the privacy of her home and she has what she refers to as an ugly cry. She says it's just ugly. She just weeps and gets it off her soul, right? Well, what's happened here when we have this big ugly cry is that we're now kicking this silt out. We're cleaning out the pipe. We don't care what what other people think of us. We don't care about that community, that society that we were living inauthentically to. It doesn't matter. We're in privacy. We're and we're just going to ugly cry. All right. Now, this again, we're wiping out that bottom part, right? Or we go and we just have a deliriously fun afternoon doing something, whatever that is. This is kind of ditching these, right? So we're cleaning them out, but it's a constant maintenance, right? So if we clear it out, we have that ugly cry. Now trauma adjusts. Now we get some headspace. We can start thinking about it. We can chunk it down. We can begin to manage it mentally and address whatever it is, right? So this essentially cleans out that bottom part, and now we can again we can process the trauma. We've got some headspace. We can chunk it up and manage this overwhelming thought process. This is where the anxiety attacks maybe drop off, the panic attacks drop off. Why? Because now we're back into our cognitive space. Absolutely critical that we understand the balance between the mind and the heart, both of which are just ultimately critical in obtaining a balance. Okay? We always talk about the aura, and the aura, of course, being this EMF. Best way to describe it is that you, being the little energy generator that you are, you need an EMF outside that energy. That EMF is our aura. Now, the aura contains two parts. The first part is that which was within the aura with us, right? So it's surrounding us. And this has the potential of becoming cloudy or clear, depending on what our thought process is doing. If our thought process is all spun around the axle and we're just 90 miles an hour processing, our aura center is going to be cloudy. What does this mean? Well, this means when we try to transmit our energy out to other auras and to the spiritual realm, that energy is going to diffuse. It's going to be refracted off all these little particles floating around with us. And we may not get any energy out at all, or very little, or it's so scattered it's really hard to determine what it was to start with. So our outbound energy is stifled at the very least. Hard to get energy out. And so hard to communicate with the ancestors, hard to communicate with the deities, hard to communicate with other spiritual auras around you. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is when our heart is in a particular emotional state, it's setting the boundary of our aura. Now, the aura boundary is just a very small field that is at some frequency, depending on how we feel. So if we are angered or frustrated or all of those things, our border is going to be at a very high frequency, in which case any other aura that tries to join with ours is not going to be able to, unless they're at the same high frequency. This is what explains things like mob mentality. If we're kind of all spun up around the axle, we kind of come together a little bit, right? Versus if I'm very calm, very relaxed, very just chill, and someone else is very peaking, right? They're just whatever. Our auras are going to bounce off each other. Chin super calm and collected and just really chill, and others who are not at the moment, maybe at the other end of the spectrum, we'll find that we may create a little bit of friction with each other, right? Because our auras are not mixing. Now, we've spoken before about totems and their usage. Now, whether it be a Mjolnir, a crucifix, whatever it is, bracelets, whatever, and you can focus on that, and you can learn to use a totem effectively. What a totem does is a totem allows us to focus our energy as a laser beam through particularly a cloudy aura. so that the signal actually gets out, the energy actually goes out, and more important, we're going to send energy through the totem out to the spiritual realm, and the spiritual realm is going to be able to send energy, intellect, back through this totem into our mind. So it's kind of a dual situation, dual traffic information situation, rather, where we're sending energy through it and we're receiving energy from it. Super important if we've got a lot going on in our lives and just things are crazy and just a lot going on. A totem is a great way to cut through that fog. Totem doesn't really care. The totem isn't affected, I should say, by the border, right? So the energy stream goes out and it kind of leaves a hole for the energy to come in, right? So those are really important. Now, Mani, of course, being the god of the moon, Mani brought us a control, a mechanism at which to receive, store, and manage all the intellect that we've received today. So if we go out and we're enjoying the sunshine and we're just gaining that intellect, we need a way to organize it. Remember, all of our knowledge is like little stacks within our mind, little piles of things regarding the same thing. These stacks of knowledge are then connected using wisdom. Now, as the wisdom grows more and more and it has more relational interactivity, more relational connections to different knowledge stacks, we're going to find that trust is going to come up and kind of support this wisdom. Now, this can also be accomplished by a level of authority that we give the knowledge, the intellect. So if someone tells us something and we've given that individual a high level of authority, that information gets a pretty good support of trust. And so it establishes within our mind the wisdom that we're hoping to gain. So this week, I want us to kind of think about intellect arriving every minute of every day, thinking about using the nighttime or the god Mani to help us to organize our thoughts, help us to just consider our bandwidth, the 3 parts of our bandwidth, right? Think about that. Actually put that in your third eye as you're meditating and you're thinking about it. This will help you cut through the red tape. All right? Hopefully get yourself some. If you don't have it already, grab it. If you have it, then maintain it. Because remember, we have to maintain this open bandwidth to accept the experiences that we have. All right? So think about you. Think about your thought process. Think about what you got in your silt. Maybe time to spring clean. Don't know. But in the meantime, love one another, because kindness is the best way to connect our hearts. All right? All right, my friends. I will see you again tomorrow when we embrace the courage of tear. I hope that you've gotten something out of this. For those of you who joined us on TikTok, thank you so much. For those of you who have joined us on all the other platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and certainly New Reality TV, thank you, or talk. For those of you who do have an extra coin or two, by all means, please feel free to drop it in the tip jar. We appreciate it. And Karen, thank you so much for your contributions. Until tomorrow, my friends, love and light.